Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.org.
It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
I'm Wayne Miller.
This is It's Movie Time.
It's Movie Time, and we have a little guest.
Right, take a look at our guest here. And you know, war. It's all over the place.
Yep.
But we have the third war of the Planet of the Apes. It's called War for Planet of the Apes.
Yep. Appropriately so.
Yeah, I guess War for the Planet of the Apes.
I believe so.
There are some logos that have War of.
Uh-huh.
You know, they must have changed their prepositions. So, look at more of the same. Come on. I mean, how is this going to stand out after two pretty giant films coming ahead of it?
Oh yeah, and I like it. It does well, and it sets up at the end for other sequels to come. You know, interesting enough, the little baby ape Cornelius, of course, was the name of the Roddy McDowall ape in the original series, as well as the TV series of Planet of the Apes. But John, I tell you, you talk about a movie that packs an awful lot of themes, and I'll say it outright. I like the movie, but it dragged close to the end, especially when they were in the compound, the soldiers' compound.
Well,
and with
this to me, in some respects, is no different from all those World War II movies about escape from imprisonment, right?
Yes.
The Great Ape Escape.
The Great Ape Escape. And I tell you, but it packs so many other themes there. The one that I noticed, and what was so funny, was Woody Harrelson's character playing the Special Forces Colonel. And with his bald head, he looks so much like a thinner Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now.
Well, you remember in the cave, or down and below.
Apocalypse Now, yes. Which, one of the saving graces with the movie, too, is some of the subtle humor.
Oh, yeah, it has a good sense of humor.
Yes. Yeah, with the soldiers have painted on their helmets, kind of reminiscent of Vietnam, various things. But one of them was Bedtime for Bonzo. Of course, the early 50s comedy with Ronald Reagan and a monkey. So I thought that was quite clever. But they packed that in there.
Well, look at it's fairly obvious that any subjugated part of our society is represented by the apes.
Yes.
And so this can be very racial as well.
You brought that up with the King Kong movie.
Right, I did. Yeah, and that's a strength. Yeah. Because obviously you don't have to care a hoot about apes in order to enjoy it, because it's a story about humanity, and we both agreed it is a human story.
It is a human story, and interesting enough, particularly compared to the first two movies, The Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, at least they had some humans that were nice, and sympathetic.
That's true.
Characters.
Good point.
And here, they really didn't.
It's Woody.
The apes are more human-like, and one of the best lines that I got thinking about later, when they were talking about they were going to maybe, I think, kill prisoners of war. The apes were going to kill these human prisoners of war. And one of them says something like, no, I think it was actually Caesar, the main leader ape, and he said, "We're not savages." Yeah, definitely, dude, you're not savages, because savages are humans.
Well, he's played by Andy Serkis. Oh, and hadn't he been nominated or maybe even won an award for his previous performance? But anyway, he is outstanding as Caesar, the main ape.
Yes, yes.
And, we talked about the cinematography.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And very, very good. And one of the things I want to bring up, too, is the... near the end, you talk about the themes, and you're right, it's almost like the great ape escape, but also a little bit of the Magnificent Seven as the little motley crew of apes
Oh,
go,
right,
you
right.
know, and follow Caesar as he wants to get revenge on
Yes.
Woody Harrelson's Colonel.
Right.
But he turns into, and I think one of the biggest themes that doesn't really, in a way it comes near the end, but really it punctuates it, and that is the Moses-like character of Caesar the Ape.
Oh my gosh! Well, what about
Let my
he's strung
apes
up
go.
half the film like Jesus Christ?
Yes, he is.
I mean,
And that's where one of the parts that you have to suspend your disbelief in movies like this. But I tell you, why in the heck didn't they just kill him? I mean, you know, he was the brains of these apes. Why didn't the humans just just do away with him?
and that's part of the fallacy of this.
Yeah,
The Woody
but-
Harrelson character is so over the top badass
Yes.
that it's just questions that you bring up are just you just shake your head
Yeah.
and say, what is it? Is this the typical trope where the bad guy wants to keep talking till somebody can take him out?
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And we talked about the costuming is fantastic and the
Yep.
cinematography and all that. But you know, you're moving me toward an argument that I make with myself, and I may make it in my written review, is that I no longer feel the stark difference between the humans and the apes. So
Yes.
therefore, what's
Yeah.
the reason for this movie?
Yes. Well, I think you're going. I see where you're going, and you may be going towards like diversity in the human race,
Yes.
and the racism towards others that are not quote of your race. But what's interesting, the apes had their own different species in there, I guess.
Good
When
point,
you look
yep.
at the orangutan, which I thought was rather interesting.
Right.
And I went back, and he is in the original movie.
Is that Maurice?
Maurice.
Yeah.
And which in the very original movie series Planet of the Apes, nearly 50 years ago, Maurice was played by Maurice Evans. So I thought that was kind of good. He does a good job, but of course one of the things though, too many close-ups for me.
Yeah. Oh, and particularly of Caesar. And
Caesar,
particularly,
it's
let me
eyes.
do that again. Say that again.
Particularly with too many close-ups.
Gosh, yeah, especially Caesar. I get it.
And the eyes, which is interesting because one of the things in the very original movie, because like I told you before we started that I dragged out my videotape and the one about 5-6 years ago, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and his mother, they called her Bright Eyes because when they were giving them this chemical that would make them smart, really what they were looking for was a cure for Alzheimer's. But anyhow, they called her Bright Eyes because she had flecks of green in her eyes.
Okay.
And that's what you notice in that movie, and I think here that they try to point out because his I'm not going to call it humanity, I'm going to call it intelligence. I think
Caesar.
his higher purpose, his higher psyche is real, and we'll call it human-like, but
Yes.
really, he's an ape. And so that's why I think for the extreme close-ups of his eyes.
Oh yeah, but you're making my point again.
Well,
He's
glad
an
I
ape,
do.
but he's human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're
Oh.
just supporting my thesis that there's nothing distinctive anymore about there being apes and we're being human. We're all pretty scuzzy. We're all, we all have our ambitions.
Yeah.
And you're so right about him. He is eminently human.
Well, it's funny, going back to the movie 6 years ago, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and he had, especially when the police capture him after beating up a neighbor, he's wearing clothes. And that brings me to one of my other favorite characters in this movie, that's there for comic relief, and that's Bad Ape, played by Steve Zahn.
Yes,
And,
I heard you chuckling more than once.
well, he's
He's
dressed.
just
He's got clothes on, and it's so cute when he gives his coat to the little girl. Which I also want to say, I think people see this in the little girl, and she reminded me so much of a young Dakota Fanning in the Tom
Yeah.
Cruise movie War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
and she does a good job. The
Yeah.
bad ape gives her his coat because she's cold, and then he puts on like a little down-filled sweater vest and a little cap, and gives his little thumbs up sign, and cute as can be, and I think very funny, and I think particularly how grim the subject matter is, as well as the grimness of all the characters, human and ape, that he adds
Yes.
a jovial light to it all.
Yeah. Well, no matter what, it doesn't look good for the human race or the ape race.
Well, like I said, the comparisons to like Moses, and I won't give it away
You're
because
right.
it comes at the
Yeah,
end.
going to the promised land. You're
They're
right.
going to the promised land, but also how the Pharaoh's army was wiped out by the wall of water. Well, I won't tell you here what happens.
I know. I was wondering, I was wondering if this wall wasn't a little bit of a reference.
Yes,
to
it
Trump.
could be. It could very well be,
It's built-
because it wasn't the apes killing the humans; it was nature.
All right.
And, okay.
Now, we're sinking into ridiculousness here. So let's get back to being really adult and human.
Okay. Yeah.
and let's award a grade to War for the Planet of the Apes. Wayne Miller, what grade would you award it?
Until it started to drag in the last third of the movie, I was going with an A minus. I'm gonna give it a B plus, but it goes, and it's I think 2 hours and 20 minutes. So plan accordingly.
And I will award it a solid B. It's not perfect, but once again, let's look at summer. Let's look at the offerings and say you will not go wrong, and you will enjoy yourself, and you will hardly be as nitpicking as we are.
Well, you're not gonna go ape over it.